All right. The mission of the Counter Narrative Project is to build power among Black gay men. We do this through community mobilization, media organizing, policy advocacy, and training. You can visit our website at thecounternarrative.org, and you can follow us on Twitter at Building Desire, and like us on Facebook at the Counter Narrative Project. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will be able to see that information there. So at any point, you can tweet or send us a message on Facebook. As for our agenda today, we have introductions that are happening now, and then we'll have presentations by our speakers. We'll then have Q&A from all of you that are joining us today. So participants will be on mute for the duration of the webinar, but you can ask questions, and here's how you do that. You want to go ahead in your dashboard and look for the questions panel. You will go ahead and expand that panel. You will type your question in the box and you will press send. So once again, you're going to go ahead and you're going to look for that questions panel. You will expand the panel, type your question in the box, and then you will press send. We'll be able to see all questions and we'll be able to answer those questions towards the end of our presentation today. So we will have two individuals speaking with you today. We'll have Charles Stevens and Mayo Schreiber. Charles Stevens is a writer and activist. He is the founder and executive director of the Counter Narrative Project and co-editor of the anthology Black Gay Genius, Answering Joseph Beam's Call. His writing has also appeared in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Lambda Literary Review, Creative Loafing, RH Reality Check, and the Gay and Lesbian Review, Alternate, and Wiretap. Mayo Schreiber Jr. is Deputy Director at the Center for HIV Law and Policy in New York. The Center for HIV Law and Policy is a national legal and policy resource and strategy center working to reduce the impact of HIV on vulnerable and marginalized communities and to secure the human rights of people affected by HIV. Mayo is a federal criminal defense attorney with 25 years of experience in private practice. Previously, he was a pro se law clerk at the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. He was also a monitor to the Honorable William Wayne Justice, Chief Judge, United States District Court, Eastern District of Texas, in Ruiz v. McCotter, a case involving confinement conditions for all prisoners incarcerated by the state of Texas. Welcome to our presenters and our first conversation. So Charles Stevens will go ahead and open up our conversation. Charles, can we hear you?
Greetings, everyone, and thank you so much, Johnny, for introducing us and offering housekeeping to our webinar attendees. Just to echo Johnny, welcome to our webinar for our brother Michael Community Update. This is a program of the Counter Narrative Project. Learn more about us at thecounternarrative.org. Our intention behind this webinar is to update the community around what's happening with Michael Johnson. Michael, just a few words about Michael. Michael was a college wrestler and student at Missouri's Lindenwood University. In 2015, he was convicted and sentenced to imprisonment under Missouri's HIV criminalization law. Many of us around the country, if not around the world, have been following his case and sending him our words of encouragement and prayers. I also want to offer special thanks to Mayo Schreiber from the Center for HIV Law and Policy for joining us this afternoon and who will be providing updates, particularly around the fight for Michael's appeal. Just to provide a further overview of our webinar this afternoon, we'll next have Mayo present. I'll then ask him a few questions, and then we'll open it up for questions from you guys. With that said, why don't we just get started and jump into things. Mayo, would you like to begin?
Absolutely, thank you. I want to thank you, Charles, and Johnny, and the entire staff of the Counter Narrative Project for extending this opportunity to me to speak about Michael, facilitate dialogue and action on his case. I'm going to summarize some of the facts and issues surrounding the case. So forgive me for speaking quickly, but there's a lot of information I'd like to convey in a short period of time. As Charles mentioned, an indictment was filed against Michael, who was a gay African-American college student, in March 2014, charging him with 6 counts of violating Missouri Statute 191.677 for recklessly infecting and attempting to recklessly infect another with HIV without the knowledge and consent of the person to be exposed to HIV. The charges were connected to consensual sexual activity involving 6 young men that occurred while Michael was attending Lindenwood University in St. Charles, Missouri, when he was in his early 20s. Michael met several of these complainants on hookup apps like Grindr. The sexual activity included oral and anal intercourse. At trial, the state maintained that Michael was diagnosed and advised of his positive HIV status before engaging in sexual activity with the complainants without disclosing his status. Michael maintained that he had told his sexual partners of his status. At trial, medical providers from clinics and at least one health department officer testified against Michael. I'll tell you a little bit about Michael. I'll try to add to what Charles has said. He was born in 1992. He's the youngest of 5 children of a single mom who struggled financially to support her kids. As an adolescent, Michael was determined to do well in sports and his studies, despite the challenges of asthma and a learning disability. He graduated from high school in 2010. That same year, he won the Indiana State High School Championship for his weight class. If you Google him, you can see some pictures of that, which is really inspiring. Due to his drive and ambition, he earned his associate degree in the spring of 2012 from Lincoln College and was accepted and attended Lindenwood University in St. Charles, while he was on the wrestling team at the time of his arrest. He had no previous criminal record. Now I'll talk a little bit about the trial and the conviction. The trial was held in St. Charles, Missouri. Just to give you a little background, that county in Missouri is the wealthiest in Missouri. It's very conservative. It's about 91% white, about 4% African American. Just to give you a taste as to how conservative it is, at one point during voir dire, when prospective jurors are questioned by the lawyers, the prosecutor commented, quote, "The wages of sin is death." At the conclusion of the trial, Michael was found guilty of 5 of the 6 counts. A Class A felony, I think 2 Class C felonies and a Class B and C felonies. Shortly thereafter, he was sentenced to a term of approximately 30 years imprisonment. He's represented on appeal by the Missouri Public Defender's Appeal Office. We have been working with Michael for a while, and most recently, with some other organizations, we filed what's called a Friend of the Court, or an amicus brief. That was filed in April this year. Attorneys Larry Lussberg and Abram Fry at the national firm Gibbons, working with us, led the drafting of the brief. Anthony Rothert of the American Civil Liberties Union of Missouri Foundation also provided key advice. There were more than 20 national and local organizations signing on to the amicus brief, ranging from the Missouri AIDS Task Force, the National Black Coalition, the Center for Constitutional Rights, One Struggle KC, and Empower Missouri. I'll give you a little bit about the status of the case. Currently, it is the court that's handling the appeal is the Intermediate Appellate Court in Missouri. It handles appeals from the circuit courts, the court where Michael was convicted. This court, the appellate court, is located in St. Louis. Michael's brief, as I said, was filed at the end of April. The amicus brief was filed in the beginning of May. The state of Missouri has until August 15th, they've got some extensions, to file their reply brief. Oral argument will occur in the case on September 12th. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the arguments in the briefs. I'll try to be short with this. Michael's attorney has 3 main points in his appeal. 2 of them are very important procedural points. The first involves the wrongful admission of evidence from a phone call, and the second is regarding a comment the prosecution made regarding another witness and was told to the jury. The third point in the brief was that the trial court erred in sentencing Michael to 30 years in prison because this violated his right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment, as guaranteed by both the United States Constitution and the Missouri Constitution. In the amicus, we raised one issue that was nearly identical or echoed one in the appellate brief, and we raised three other issues. We argued that the statute violates the constitutional guarantee of equal protection, and it under the 14th Amendment. That's because the statute, the one that he was convicted under, imposes burdens on people living with HIV, singling them out among people living with other communicable diseases without any rational justification. We claimed that ultimately the act is discriminatory and motivated by an animus towards disfavored groups. Our second point was that the act violates the right to privacy and medical information. Our third point was that the act violates clear prohibitions against disability-based discrimination under the what's called the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, and the Rehabilitation Act. That's because the statute singles out people living with HIV for unique and uniquely onerous punishments for otherwise legal conduct based entirely on their HIV status and scientifically unsupported beliefs about HIV. And then the final point was a similar point that Mr. Johnson's Michael's sentence violated his Eighth Amendment right against cruel and unusual punishment. With this type of argument, we asked the court to look at the punishment, and our conclusion that was grossly disproportionate to the offense that he was convicted of. I want to step back from that. That's his appeal. There's some parallel information about what's going on with Michael in prison. He's incarcerated in South Central Correctional Center in Licking, Missouri. In the beginning of May, he was administratively convicted of a disciplinary infraction. He's been appealing that infraction, that conviction for that infraction, through the prison administrative process. However, he has been placed in disciplinary segregation, which is highly restrictive. He's only allowed outside of his cell for brief periods, and he can't make telephone calls. He can receive and send mail. Charles and Johnny asked about thoughts on what can be done for Michael. I wanted to start out by saying, I've spoken to Michael on several occasions and his family, and they've been deeply appreciative of the support he's received from everyone. And thinking about what can be done for Michael, on a state level, usually what affects politicians in the judiciary, these are effectively the deciders in someone's case, is advocacy performed by residents and organizations within a state. You know, if you can partner with a local organization or individuals, i.e. Organizations or individuals in Missouri, that's probably one of the things that would be most effective. Those are the people that, Missouri residents vote for their politicians, and to some extent, members of the judiciary are also voted in. So if that can be done and you can generate media attention to the case, for example, writing letters to the editor or signed by local Missouri advocates, or organizing some sort of media event, that might be useful. One thing I would caution, it's really important to speak, this is just generally, and forgive me if you already know this, to speak with a defendant's attorney first. He or she may have specific views on how an organization could best help or hurt a case. In some instances, for example, a group of people could stand outside the appellate courthouse with signs saying, Michael Johnson's sentence is a travesty of justice, Missouri residents support Michael, HIV is not a crime, etc. That might have an impact. I couldn't tell you in this particular case. It's really important to get input from, as I said, the defendant's attorney and local advocates by what is appropriate in terms of advocacy in a particular jurisdiction. They really are the best judges. I'm just throwing some ideas out there that you might think about. Something I do know, Michael can use financial assistance for purchasing necessities. You can deposit money into his prison account through the website Access Corrections. Michael also likes and has been supported by cards or letters from his supporters. I do have a big note of caution about this, though. Michael's young. He's not had previous contact with the criminal quote-unquote justice system. What you don't want to do if you write him is encourage him to discuss anything about his case or any actions, any of his actions in prison. Like any other prisoner, anything he says to other prisoners, guards, or anyone with whom he corresponds can be used against him in a parole or probation hearing down the road, if his appeal is not successful, or it can be used in charging him with a disciplinary infraction in prison, or it might ultimately affect any request with the state of Missouri, with the governor for clemency or a pardon. The question before you do anything is, will this be helpful or hurtful or potentially hurtful for any of Michael's appeals or legal applications or his life in prison? So again, the message would be, don't ask Michael anything about his case, the particulars, or what's going on in prison. This may sound harsh, but it's a reality for prisoners. We've seen bad repercussions in other cases where people unknowingly elicit a response from a prisoner and it's used against that prisoner. Finally, just about the ADSAG, the disciplinary infraction. If anyone is aware of any Missouri law schools or legal organizations that represent Missouri state prisoners in handling disciplinary actions, that might be very helpful to Michael. I'd be happy to speak with anyone about that. Just when I was in law school, way back when, we were allowed to represent prisoners with disciplinary infractions. I do not know if there are any schools or any legal organizations that do that, but if anyone is aware of that, that would be really helpful. That's about all I have to say, so I'm happy to answer any questions I can or hear people's comments.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I just want to ask a few questions. One of the questions that I received earlier today was from someone in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area, and he was wondering if Michael can have visitors.
I think you have to be, I can't answer specifically, but here's the advice I would give. Go to the Missouri Bureau of Prisons, look up Licking, the South Central Prison, and they will set forth their rules. Generally, a prisoner can have visitors, but they have to be approved first by the prison officials. Sometimes that takes a little bit, so you'd want to check that out. However, since Michael currently is in disciplinary segregation, I don't know if he would be allowed to have a non-attorney visit. And that's something I would recommend people go to the website and check, or call the institution. If anybody has any trouble finding that out, I'd be happy to follow up.
And what's that website again?
You would Google Missouri Department of Corrections, Missouri prisons. You want to go to I could do that now. You want to go to the official website, and he is in, and that should give you a link to, what did I say, South Center Correctional Facility, where he's currently incarcerated. And they may have their own rules at that particular prison.
Great.
I'm pulling that information.
Beg your pardon?
Also, Johnny's going to pull that information. He's Googling it now.
Okay.
What are could you walk us back through the upcoming timeline? I know you referenced a number of things being things in motion happening in the next few months involving Michael's appeal. Could you just walk us back through that one more time?
Of course.
Particularly like key dates.
Okay. The brief filed by his attorney was filed at the end of April this year. The amicus brief that we and other organizations filed was in the beginning of May. The state of Missouri, who's opposing his appeal, has until August 15th, and that's in, 5 days, to file their reply brief. Oral argument in the case is set in the appellate court on September 12th. That's the current schedule that the court has set forth. I think it'll probably be the final schedule, but it's useful. You can go to, I think it's Missouri Court Records, and look up Michael's Michael's name and number. If you look in, you choose Eastern Appellate Court, and I think there are 3 that pop up, but it's the second one. It'll show you the dates, and you can just check it. I mean, I checked yesterday, and those were the dates.
And you said September 12th, a hearing is scheduled, or the argument?
Yes, that's correct.
I know that it's impossible to predict these things or look into a crystal ball, but I have to ask, do you have any thoughts or perspectives around like the chances of Michael being able to successfully appeal this conviction?
I think there were some very strong arguments raised in both briefs. So I'm very hopeful, but I really don't have a crystal ball. I know that, the real problem in this case is the statute. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the statute, but the statute is one of the harshest, let's say, in the country involving HIV exposure or transmission. So that's a very difficult issue. The other thing is, I have every reason to believe the court will be impartial, but Missouri is a very conservative state, and so I really can't tell you.
And what happens after the September 12th? After the arguments will be heard, like what are the possible outcomes of that, and what is the timeline for when the decision will be reached regarding the appeals?
Excellent question. Generally it takes months before the court will issue a decision. The court could vacate the sentence and order him retried. The court could act on the sentence and remand for resentencing, or the court could just affirm the conviction. If the latter occurs, there is one more court in Missouri, the highest court, and Michael could appeal to that court. But that court does not accept, my understanding is the court doesn't accept all appeals. And so the first hurdle is, would they accept it? And the second hurdle, of course, is how they would decide it.
And what would go into them deciding whether or not to accept the appeal? The highest court.
If they thought there was any significant error in the way the lower court ruled, if they thought there was some question about the law and there was some confusion in the way lower courts have decided a particular issue. I'm not licensed to practice in Missouri, and I'm not totally familiar with their highest court, so this is just generally principles or issues that the court would be interested in if they accept appeal.
It's very helpful. And I know you made some really excellent recommendations regarding the importance of folks in Missouri being involved. But I was wondering if you had any, because there are a lot of folks nationally, if not internationally, that are also very interested. Are there any other? So, do you think there's any use or value for national advocates outside of Missouri being involved around Michael Johnson's case in their own, what are the implications for national advocates to be involved and engaged outside of Missouri?
Oh, I think
if any.
It's important that outsiders are involved. In terms of, our goal here is to get Michael out through legal means, and really usually the people in deciding that are people from Missouri. A lot of times, courts or politicians don't really care what Mayo Schreiber in New York may think about what they're doing. I'm not voting for the politicians. I'm not involved in the judicial process there. However, that said, so that's why I really would encourage anyone to see if there's any way they can support local organizations in Missouri, local folks in Missouri, in any of their efforts. But to get back to your question, I think it's important, at least on a national level, to support Michael. It's important, for him, but it's also, his case raises really important issues about HIV statutes like this one, important issues about African American men being incarcerated in this country disproportionately, how HIV is treated, a whole number of important issues, and it's of assistance to keep these topics current in the press and keep people focused on them.
Thank you so much for that. You mentioned that Michael was currently in disciplinary segregation, and I was wondering, is that the same thing as solitary confinement?
Different state prisons have different terms. Many people refer to it colloquially as being in the hole. I think it's effectively the same because Michael is confined in his cell, as I understand it, by himself for long stretches of time. He only gets out briefly for any sort of exercise, and he gets out, I don't know, maybe it's 3 times a week, maybe it's less, for a shower. I believe he eats in his cell, and so his contact with other prisoners is severely limited.
And could you say a little bit about, did you say that he could or could not send and receive mail?
He can send and receive mail.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
he can get mail, that's no problem. Sending mail, sometimes if he doesn't have a stamp, he has to wait some time until an officer comes around basically selling stamps. But he can send and receive mail.
And just one more question
he also
before
likes
we
getting
open
magazines.
it up.
Pardon me.
What magazines does he like getting?
I don't know. I and a lawyer at Ms. Lawless sent him, I think it's Hip Hop Weekly, and he had expressed interest.
Oh, we have something in common.
And I think he expressed interest in people, but I don't really know what he's getting. I just know that he's interested in music. He's interested in, current events and people, and so those were things that appealed to him. And I don't know what else he's getting, so I really couldn't speak to that. But I think anything along those lines that you think might interest him would be great.
And and one more question before we
Sure.
open it up. How is Michael doing? Do you have a sense of, is he able to take his medicines? Is he able to have access to his health care? I know you said he was in disciplinary segregation, but do you have a sense of how he's doing in terms of his health, in terms of his spirits, so forth?
Michael is a really optimistic and gentle man. At least that's my take from the conversations I've had with him. He's frequently upbeat, He's a very cheerful person. I mean, knows what he's facing, but he really puts his best face on it. I don't know him intimately, so I couldn't tell you beyond that, but I've always been really struck by his positive attitude and his cheerfulness. I believe, from what he's told me, he's been, getting his medications. His health, I believe, is good. But when I've spoken to him, we haven't always been speaking about. I couldn't give you a lock on it, but that's been my impression.
No, that's super helpful. Thank you so much for that. So we're going to open the floor up for questions from folks listening in on our webinar. So if you have questions, please feel free to use the box to submit them. Johnny, could you say one more time how people can submit questions?
Absolutely. People can submit questions by typing the questions into the box, and all you have to do is expand the questions box, type your question where it says type question here, and then click send, and we do have questions that are coming in. So thank you all so much for participating.
Johnny, will you read those to me?
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. So Charles, I'm going to go ahead and go down the line here. So our first question from Michael. His question is, how do I reach Michael's attorney or Missouri on the ground supporters?
Very good question. Let's think of organizations. I believe Empower Missouri. If you Google them, they might be helpful in terms of matching up with either work they're doing or others are doing on Michael's case, or the Missouri AIDS Task Force. Those are two organizations that I can think of off the top of my head.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Our next question from Corey. Can you help me understand the context or factors as to why their words were accepted as true more than his account? And was this just a matter of the jury making a gut level decision about who's telling the truth?
Sure. One real problem with these cases, this is a universal problem with statewide, with any jurisdictions that have statutes like the one in Missouri. The case frequently comes down to he said, she said, he said. For most of us, before we engage in a sexual interaction, we don't get a release from the person we're having sex with. Here, all you have is testimony between two people, and juries frequently are sympathetic to quote unquote victims, and so it's really hard for a defendant to convince a jury that he disclosed. A lot of times, the complainants really didn't want to hear it, even if it was said. In this case, there were 6 complainants, and they testified against Michael, and so that was a challenge, given the number. Also, something that's really makes my blood boil is that you had witnesses from medical health advisors who testified effectively against Michael by saying they told him of his status and told him that he had to tell people. And that's a real issue, because if you go to a medical provider, you expect a certain amount of confidentiality and you expect a certain amount of advice. You don't expect for that medical provider to basically turn against you, and that would make you very reluctant to go seek treatment. And in this case, some of these people testified against him. And basically, it comes down to who the jury believed. And in this case, the jury believed at least 5 of the 6 complainants. One of the complainants, the jury did not believe that he was harmed in the way that was alleged.
Okay. Very quickly, I'd like to. So the in the question prior, is there information on how to reach Michael's attorney available?
If you go to the docket
Yep.
in his case,
Mm-hmm.
his name is there, and there should be a way of contacting him that way.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Next question is, Mayo, could you repeat how we could support Michael or how to support Michael financially? And also, can you elaborate on what the disciplinary segregation entails?
Okay. There is a website. It's called www.accesscorrections, corrections.com. Access Corrections is one word. You can go there, you can register, and you can transfer funds to Michael's account. You may need to know his full name, which is Michael L. Johnson, and his ID number in prison, and I can give that to you. You can look this up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a website, Missouri Government Offender Search, and you'll see a picture of Michael and some information about him. But anyway, the important information, I believe, is his ID number, and that's 1285371.
Okay. Thank you so much. And for those and the disciplinary segregation component of this, I know that you talked about that a bit, but just want to. So it looks like you mentioned that how often is he out and able to interact with other individuals?
Um, I am not
Mm-hmm.
there. I've spoken to Michael briefly about it.
Mm-hmm.
This is my understanding, and that is he's out. He's allowed out maybe an hour a day for recreation. Otherwise, he's locked in the cell, and he's also allowed out for showering, maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Give me 1 second here. Just moving to the next question. So the question is, could an error be the fact that the law itself doesn't reflect accurate science, therefore the ruling would be wrong?
That is an argument that has been raised, and we're very hopeful. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me see. I'm taking a look here. Missouri State public defenders have 270 too few attorneys for current clients. Has Michael received adequate defense? Can the issue be raised in the appeal in any helpful way? There's also a parenthetical here. Our governor and Michael Barrett, director of the state public defenders, are currently in a very public fight about the understaffing. Litigation has been filed about the restriction of funds that were appropriated.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Any concern about the quality of Michael's representation, as I understand it, could be raised after his appeal is decided. While I can't comment on the representation he received in this case, I do know that what your caller is asking, there is a lawsuit, and Missouri does not provide much financing for public defenders, and so I believe they are really stretched, put it that way.
Thank you.
But that really doesn't answer the question in terms of, you have a variety of like private attorneys, you have some really excellent public defenders who do great jobs, and then some not. It's the same thing with private representation. It's hard to make a general judgment, and you shouldn't.
Okay. I'm just going down the list of questions here. Can Michael's sentence be commuted by the governor?
I believe so, yes. But he has to. My understanding is he has to exhaust all his appeal.
We have a question here. Who are Michael's Missouri friends, and how do we reach them? Is that something that's possible?
Missouri friends. Well, I know he has supporters. I don't know about Michael's personal friends.
Okay.
And supporters, I'm really, and I suggested Empower Missouri, I think, was one of the organizations that you might contact. But you know what? Let me think about that, and I can send you a list of Missouri organizations that might welcome contact about Michael.
Thank you so much. And also, any information that we get after this call, we can certainly find an appropriate way to share this information.
Great.
Okay. So another question here. I'm really feeling for Michael and in pain to hear that he is in disciplinary segregation. Can we get any more details of how he ended up there, as in is he continuing to face anti-gay, anti-black, anti-pos, anti-disability discrimination, and how he is holding up?
I can't answer the first question. He is appealing his disciplinary segregation. I believe there are 3 levels within the prison, and then one of the final appeals is to the administration outside of the South Central Correctional Center. In terms of how he's holding up, as I said before, he has a really remarkable attitude. I sure wouldn't have it. He's very positive, and he's very appreciative. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay.
But as the caller notes, it's really painful to understand what he's going through at this moment in terms of being, as they say, in the hole.
Okay. Can you comment on what local folks in Missouri are doing, and how we can support them? Any information that you have on what some of these organizations might be doing currently?
I don't have the I don't know everything that's going on. What I do know is there are, I think it's maybe it's Kansas City Cares or Empower Missouri. They're partnering with some other national organizations like the National Center for Lesbian Rights and some other individual lawyers in drafting a letter either to the editor or trying to place an op-ed piece in one of the Missouri papers, drawing attention to Michael's case and the injustices that have occurred.
Wonderful, thank you. Just a note here, we did get some information that Empower Missouri actually staffs the Missouri AIDS Task Force, and we actually have some information here on how to be added to the Google group. So we'll keep this information, and like I said, as we determine how to best get information back out to everybody about any additional questions here, we'll make sure that this is added in. Thank you so much, Jeanette, for this. Okay. So we have a question here. Hi, Kevin Tarver here, writing for thebody.com. In what ways can social media be used to further shed light on Michael's case without hindering or hurting his appeals?
Talk about the statute. It's an amazing statute. It is, I think it's actually the only one that has a specific clause that says if you use a condom, That is not a defense to these charges. There are other aspects of the statute that are really harsh and unfair. You can talk about Michael's sentence. Michael was given a sentence of 30 years about. And that sentence, the prosecutor during the trial made a remark analogizing Michael's alleged actions as akin to drunk driving. If you accept that analogy, you should know that under Missouri law, driving drunk is a Class B misdemeanor. First offenders, if convicted, face a maximum penalty of 6 months in jail. And many people get far less on that. The punishment Michael received in this case is equivalent to a murder sentence. For drunk driving charges during a similar sentence, there must be multiple dead bodies. In this case, there was no evidence that Michael meant to harm anyone. Even if you believe the allegations that were made at trial.
Thank you so much. Okay, and was there ever any proof that Michael's strain of HIV was the source of the complainant's HIV?
That's a good and a complicated question. I don't know if I'm the best person to answer it. I can just sketch out some of the larger issues. The tests that they can perform on a strain of HIV can show that two people share a similar strain. So sometimes you can use it to show that the strain the defendant has is different than the strain of the complainants. However, usually, or not usually, even if it's shown to be the same strain, the question isn't answered by testing who passed that, who passed it one way or who transmitted it one way or the other. So, whether John gave it to Joe or Joe gave it to John, that can't be determined by a scientific test. And also, even if the strain is the same, in many communities, the pool of, in this instance of young gay men is relatively small. And so even if it was the same strain, that doesn't mean anything. It may mean that many people in that community have the same strain.
All right, thank you. And one final question. Historically, what are the actions that have been taken by communities or organizations that provoke the courts to give a different consideration on a judgment or case?
Attention to a case, attention to the injustice in the case, speaking to your elected officials to change the statute. What else? Education is really important, and it's not just the people who have to speak to their elected officials, or even the prosecutor's office. You have people of faith, you have women who are living with HIV, you have a variety of organizations, victims' rights organizations. If you can get those people to speak to the elected officials, a lot of times that has a lot of sway. What we want to do is two things. One, bring attention to the unfairness of the statute in Missouri and work to have it changed by the legislature. And two, bring continued attention to Michael's case, to the barbaric sentence he received and how unfair it is.
Okay, and I do apologize. There was one more here. I do want to make sure I get that in. Thank you so much, Mayo. What would it mean for Missouri's HIV criminalization statute and others nationally if Michael's appeal is successful?
If the statute was found unconstitutional, it would pertain solely to the statute in but the reasoning involved in the case, it would be a very important decision because other courts would be aware, one, that there was a change in Missouri, and this is how it was analyzed, and the highest court there accepted this particular argument, and it would be, hopefully it starts a domino effect, such that other states would agree with that same analysis, accepted in Missouri, and when their statutes are challenged, other defendants could use a similar argument to help overturn their statutes in different states.
All right, thank you so much. Charles, that is our final question. Oh, hold on one second. I do just a comment, and then Charles, I'll turn it over to you. PWN USA will support efforts to reach legislators. Thank you so much for that, Arnetta. And Charles, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, I want to again extend a thank you to Mayo for joining us on this call. Thank you so much for providing insights into what's happening with Michael and fielding questions. I think that I know I got a lot of information that I didn't have before, so I really appreciate what you shared. And thank you, Johnny, of course, for your hard work on pulling this webinar together. I know it's no small task. And thank y'all for, being on the webinar, listening in and asking really great questions. And yeah, I mean, we have to fight. We have to fight. We have to free Michael. And, I think through keeping the conversation going, keeping the issues impacting him, keeping that on our radar, continuing to raise awareness, continuing to engage in public education, continuing to strategize, continuing to imagine, like that is the work that we are charged to do. So, let's keep it going. Definitely, please stay connected to Counter Narrative. You can join our email list through going to thecounternarrative.org. And of course, you can also find us on social media. We are on Facebook at The Counter Narrative. We are on Twitter at Building Desire. So definitely stay connected to our network, and we will continue to try to update folks as best we can. And and also as you folks out across the country, as y'all have information or learn stuff, please share it with us. It's all about information exchange. So thank you so much. Again, thank you, Mayo. Thank you, Johnny. And stay tuned, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity and so grateful for this presentation and the excellent questions.
And a special thank you to just the Center for HIV Law and Policy and all the amazing work that y'all have been doing. I definitely need to extend that. Catherine, certainly, and just, the amicus briefs and just really being an amazing, amazing national partner in awareness. So I do appreciate that.
I appreciate that. The other thing, I just put in a plug for the Positive Justice project. We have different projects going on in different states. So if you're not in Missouri, look at our website, and there are groups around the country working to change their laws in their states.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Until later. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.